Then we'll officially begin. And we'd like to say Kwai, Wolastoqiyik, hello, and we welcome you in the beautiful Wolastoqiyik language. So Jean Rooney is my name. I go by the pronoun she. I'm the coordinator of advanced studio practice here at the New Brunswick College of Craft and Design. So I'm feeling the joys of spring, people, even though it's fall. The weather is absolutely gorgeous out there. We've had a hopeful outcome for our American neighbors in the election. And so I think that this is also, even though we're in a pandemic, a time of hope. Today is our 9th lecture, and we're very happy to have Charlie Gaffney. The Wild Rover has returned to give a guest lecture today. And a special welcome to Jen Hurst. A reminder before we begin that this session is being recorded, and so by staying and participating, you are consenting to being recorded. Also a gentle reminder that you can be seen and heard just as you see and hear others. And if you haven't done so already, please turn your microphones to mute. If you're experiencing like feedback or glitching, turning your video off may help. The opinions expressed are strictly those of the speaker, and they do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the New Brunswick College of Craft and Design, our partners, the Atlantic Centre for Creativity, or the Sheila Hugh Mackay Foundation. And lastly, I ask for your patience and understanding as we're all navigating this technology and delivery mode and change of pace. So to officially begin, we will go over to Alison for the Territorial Acknowledgement.
On this unceded and unsurrendered territory where we live and work, the peace and friendship treaties were signed between 1725 and 1779 by the Elnu, the Wolastoqiyik, the Passamaquoddy First Nations, and the British. These peace and friendship treaties were among the earliest treaties to be made between Indigenous nations and Western nations. Despite the effort of the Canadian government since Confederation to assimilate and erase Indigenous peoples through government policies such as the Indian Act and the Residential Schools Act, the resilience of Indigenous peoples has meant that Indigenous traditions continue to influence the Canadian political, social, cultural, and environmental landscape today.
Thank you so much, Alison. And now we'll go over to Lee to tell us about this guest lecture series.
Thanks, Jean. This series is sponsored and made possible by the Sheila Hugh Mackay Foundation. It is organized, as we've said, by the Advanced Studio Practice Program at the New Brunswick College of Craft and Design in partnership with the Atlantic Centre for Creativity. And the purpose of the guest lecture series is to model successful contemporary practice to the students and to inform, inspire, and ignite art and design dialogue and engagement in the greater public community. The series provides this by giving a platform for presentation, creating time for dialogue, and by celebrating the creative and cultural riches that we hold in Atlantic Canada. And as I already said, I think it's a great series.
Thank you, Lee. And now we'll go over to Ben to tell us about our partner, the Atlantic Centre for Creativity.
Thanks, Jean. The Atlantic Center for Creativity is an initiative that promotes creativity across disciplines. It has 3 main goals: to promote research and programming in the area of creativity and innovation, to offer events such as symposia, conferences, and workshops on a yearly basis for sharing ideas and information, and to build partnerships in the area of creativity and innovation on a local, regional, and national basis. You can get additional information and check out the new online journal Creativity Matters by visiting the website atlanticcenterforcreativity.com.
Thank you, Ben. And now we'll go over to Audrey, and Audrey will do the guest speaker introduction.
Today's speaker is Charlie Gaffney, and his lecture is entitled Becoming an Indigenous Artist. This presentation explores the journey into and through the creative life as an Indigenous artist, honoring Indigenous ways of being and knowing. Charlie Gaffney is a Wolastoqiyik visual artist and educator. Charlie has been carving since 1988 and was taught initially by master carver Ned Bear. Charlie has been the recipient of grants from the Brunswick Arts Board for his Indigenous Mask and Paddle creations. His artwork is represented in private and Canadian government collections also through Asia, Australia, England, and the USA. Over to Charlie.
Thank you very much. What a great introduction. You guys did a great job. Thank you. Okay, so I guess what I should do now is share screen. Let me get this, I'll try and get this right. I did this once with Jean. Okay.
Yeah, that's looking good.
Looking all right?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. So hi everybody, thank you Jean for the invitation, and it's exciting. It's exciting to see these series and participate in these series. So this is always the most uncomfortable part, is talking about yourself as an artist. So I put together this slideshow, and I went over it with Jean, and I think I cover quite a bit of ground since 1988. As Audrey mentioned, I've been carving, and I studied under Ned Bear. And Ned Bear only taught me how to do, I'm just gonna move. Can you guys see the slideshow okay? Yeah, I'm gonna come back to this. This is my website here. So where it all began. So back in 1987, going into high school in 1988, there was a gentleman by the name of Ned Bear, who is a local artist from Sedunxas First Nation, which is St. Mary's First Nation, which is right here on the north side of Fredericton. And you can see Ned Bear is the gentleman standing to the far right in the photograph. And beside him is Percy Sakobi, who I think many of you know Percy. Percy used to work with me as an instructor in the IVA program. And believe it or not, that is me on the opposite side of the talking pole with hair and standing straight there. That's me way back when. And then there's Walter Paul, and I believe a librarian. And I wanted to start with this picture because it kind of takes me back to where it all began. Obviously, it was in high school, and learning the different ways of carving and the different ways of really connecting with a natural material. And for those of you who have never worked with natural material before, especially wood, there is a beautiful smell and a feel to the wood that really, really, it kind of connected with me in a way that I felt like this is what I want to do. This is something that really drives, gets me up in the morning and gets me there to high school. And I couldn't wait. I absolutely couldn't wait. I think it was like last period of the day in high school that I would literally run from one end of the high school to the other to get there early so that I could start working with this incredible artist, Ned. Sadly, Ned passed away. I believe it was a year ago that Ned passed away. And but I was very fortunate to learn from him. So he taught me how to carve a mask, one mask, and he taught us how to sharpen chisels and to use a mallet properly and to really think outside of the box as an artist and be creative. And, you know, other students in that class really struggled trying to find that connection with the wood. But for me, it just, something took over. And it was like, I just, you know, those of us who are artists, you know, that you get into to a zone, and the zone just kind of takes over your body, and it allows you to kind of be free. And, you know, it's, you know, you're loving it when you look at your watch and it says 2 o'clock. And then the next time you look at your watch, it may be 5 o'clock. You're just kind of completely sunk into the zone. So this is the first mask that I carved with Ned Bear. And you could see in the photo that it looks like one of Ned's masks. it has a bit of me in there, but it's more of Ned's work than mine, because, you know, as a first piece of work, working with artists, you're learning the ropes and you're kind of getting the feel of it. But this mask kind of really propelled me into a future of being an Indigenous artist that I never thought would be possible. Just that one mask alone really kept me going, and it really allowed me to want to continue. So this mask, actually, this is a picture that was taken by the Northside News. I think it was like maybe my second time ever being in a newspaper at that time. And I've carved a couple of other masks previous to this piece, but I always chose this piece because it was special. It was my first mask. And so the Northside News did a small article on me, and I said yes to going and posing for this. And so I wanted to share this just because of the, it kind of propelled me. As people were reading it, they were saying, "Oh, I didn't know you were an artist." And it really drove me to keep going. So that mask also, you can see here I'm at UMB, and there was, people saw that article in the paper, and then it led to me going and doing another article at UMB, and it was part of the UMB Times. They had a UMB paper. And so I said yes. There, you know, other than Ned, I don't think there was, in Percy Sokobi, there wasn't too many of us that were actually carving at the time. And my artwork, I felt, wasn't, you know, super good. So again, I grabbed that mask because I love that mask, and Ned helped me with that mask, and I brought that mask along with me. But the more people talked to me about my artwork, I felt that this is something I really enjoyed, and as an artist, I wanted to continue this using wood and getting my hands in and going out into the woods and actually connecting with the land, and it was really, it's inspiring to do that, to wake up every day and go through this process. So after, I know a lot of the staff are probably laughing right now because this is the college. This was years ago. I did attend the College of Craft and Design as a student many years ago. And I attended because there was an Indigenous program there, and Elder Gwen Orisha, or Gwen Bear, had started this program. And George Fry, the director of the college years ago, Gwen was on the corner of the street talking with my mother, and George was standing with Gwen, and I happened to be walking by. And George Fry asked me, you know, "Hey, listen, well, you know, my mother was talking to Gwen. George asked me, he said, 'Are you an artist?' And just started up a conversation with me. And I said, yeah, actually, I think I am. You know, by this time I might have done maybe 2 masks and maybe 3. And he said, 'Why don't you come in while your mom's talking to Gwen?' And George hooked me into coming into the College of Craft and Design. And I ended up attending the college, and I ended up going into the Native Studies program, or back then Gwen was running the program, and it inspired me to take, you know, it was the Indigenous topics of the day that we covered in Gwen's course. And we had Indigenous artists come in, and like Ned, who kind of worked with the students a little bit, and then he left. But it was mostly talking. A lot of the work at the college was getting into drawing, so it helped me, you know, go to the college and take photography. I got to do what basically the FEA students were doing at the time. So I got my hands into a little bit of all the different media. But I left shortly after about a year. I went for a year and a half, and I ended up leaving. And I just thought, this really isn't for me. I wasn't able to carve. I wasn't able to have a studio and work in that capacity. So I ended up going off to university and did an arts degree. And then after that, I ended up working in the airline business. I was still carving, but I was only doing about maybe 2 to 3 masks a year. It wasn't a significant number of body of work that I was producing. I had a young family, I had 2 kids at the time. And so parenting obviously was first and foremost, and providing for them. So I wasn't able to just kind of immerse myself as a full-time artist, but still loved getting out and getting natural resources. So that's me beside Chris, if you can see up on the left-hand side. I look like Fonzie there with the big coif of hair going. And, there's Birch Clavet right in the front. And it was a fun year. It's a lot of fun. And I'll always remember the memories as a student I had going to the college. So I did take away quite a few things from there. So we get into the mask work. So here's one of my earlier masks that I did. And this one was actually, I gave this to my brother, TJ Burke. And years ago when TJ was in politics, a family member came and said, geez, it would be great maybe if we could possibly get you a little airtime and have you present a mask on the floor in the legislature when your brother, when they're in session. And I thought that would be a lot of fun. That would be cool. Then people could kind of see my artwork. So I'm starting to think about at this time when I was creating my artwork about getting my name out there a little bit more, and maybe there would be some sort of like positive spin from showing my work publicly. Other than the 2 pictures that were in the paper, that a very small interview, but this was more of it was a grander scale of getting out there and getting myself put out. So Ned, years ago, when I first started learning from Ned Bear, he liked to work with butternut. And traditionally, butternut is a wood that Indigenous people would not cut down, and we wouldn't carve it because it produces a fruit that is traditionally part of our diet. That's something that we would have eaten. So, fast forward hundreds and hundreds of years, and Ned finds working with butternut to be extremely soft and beautiful colors on the wood. So I continued that tradition and started using butternut and other hardwoods. It's considered a hardwood, but it's actually quite soft to carve into. So I decided to do this piece for my brother and present it to him at the legislature years ago, back when he was in politics. And it's a really big mask. You can't really tell by looking at it hanging on the wall. I'll give you a sense here. I've got another picture of it coming up. But these are really big pieces. These are probably over 2.5 feet like height. And this one, because it's so round, it's probably almost 2 feet wide. And so I thought this would be something fun to add to this this presentation to kind of give you the idea. You can see a little bit of the cork around the cheek area, and butternut is one of those beautiful pieces of wood that has an outer rind to it. After you get through the bark, you get into this beautiful cork. And I thought, I'm going to try and leave that onto my artwork. I also would like to make a statement, I guess, before I get too far into the masks, that mask making is not traditional to Wolastoqiyik people. It's not traditional to Mi'kmaq people, and it's not traditional in the Atlantic area. However, I love it so much, I can't stop doing it. So it's just something that, but what I did do is, you'll see in my pieces, is I start to add traditional images of iconography into my artwork that makes it more relevant. But this is just one of these beautiful gifts that Ned was able to share with us. So here's another piece. Again, this is butternut. This was actually done for a show in the George Fry Gallery, and there's a series of them. And this was made for a friend of mine when he got married, he asked me for 2-3 years if he could get a mask from me. And you know, when you're working full-time and you're not a full-time artist, it's not easy just to whip a mask up. They typically take me about 45 hours to do a mask from start to finish. Now that's fast. And you know, as some of you know, you've seen me carve up in the studio in the IBA program. And you would also know that some of the students, they may do a mask and it could take them 90 hours. It could take them 80 hours. It takes a long time, but I've been carving for such a long time that, you know, I could get down to the basics and really move a lot of wood when I needed to. And I know Dan's watching, and he used to jokingly call me a guabit, which is a beaver in Wolastoqiyik, meaning I just chew through the wood. So, but this is, I use Bear here. There's Bear for the eyebrows, and I used long hair, horsehair, and I get my horsehair from British Columbia, and I feel that it's such a beautiful aspect to add to the beautiful, the wood. It just stands out naturally. And if you're wondering why I have a tongue on there, if you're not sure, or if you don't know, I guess First Nations people have a really great sense of humor. And in fact, when we joke about it with other First Nations people, especially around family members, we're usually laughing with each other, poking fun. You know, my uncle Lindsay, we used to call him the man with 1,000 faces. He used to basically make a face at just about anything. And so I was thinking about all those funny times when he used to make faces at us when we were kids. And one of them was he always had his tongue sticking out and, you know, making this this funny face. So I thought it would be fun to start adding a little bit of humor into my artwork and try and make it a little, you know, change it up a little bit. And you can see here, this is at the George Fry Gallery at the College of Crafting Design. This was an AVA show, the Aboriginal Visual Arts program, before it became the Indigenous Visual Arts program. And so here's just a few pieces of my artwork that I did. And these are pretty old masks. I mean, these are going back, I would say these are probably going back probably 15 years now, maybe even longer for some of these pieces of work. So you could see the size of the wall is massive, and look at the size of the mass. They're really big pieces of work. So it's a lot of fun. The blue one here, I wanted to kind of highlight the blue one. You know, one of the ever-changing things as being an Indigenous artist is, for me personally, is changing the style of my mass and adding, you know, storytelling through my artwork. And this was, again, stepping outside of my realm, my box as an artist, and trying something completely new. And I feel as I progress as an artist, I do that. I don't like to be boxed in. I like to actually take risks and try things that sometimes work out and sometimes they don't, but you're not going to grow unless you try that. So this blue mask ended up going to Ottawa. A friend of mine, Pam Pometer, who requested this mask, she saw it on thank goodness for Facebook back then. When it first came out, she saw it and she said, I have to have that mask. So I boxed it up and sent it to her. And it's based off a Glooscap legend where Glooscap is fighting a giant bird on top of Mount Katahdin. And Glooscap, as he's trying to climb the mountain, the bird, the wind that the bird is creating is so cold off the top of the mountain, it basically turns Glooscap, you know, he's shivering, so it's cold. So I wanted to represent a kind of image that captured that if I was to tell a story about this mask and share it with other people. So that's kind of, storytelling is a big part of our culture, as many cultures. And so this is something that that I just went with. Yeah. So I guess, by the way, the last mask was popple. It's a very soft wood. Most pieces that I work with is butternut, but I do like to change it up. this is butternut. It's a very light colored piece of butternut. The reason why I'm using so much butternut is because there's a gentleman by the name of Kurt Hanna, who is a friend of mine, and he's an arborist with the city. And he was an arborist with the city. He's now working with a private firm. And Kirk would call me and just say, hey, listen, I've got this massive butternut tree down. Do you want it? And so we're very fortunate. We've had a lot of butternut donated to the college over the years. And, very fortunate that I have a good friend like him that could share some of this work. So this one, I've never actually worked with a client who told me exactly what they wanted. That's, as an Indigenous, just as an artist, I think, never putting Indigenous aside, just having working with a client where they say, look, this is what I'm looking for in terms of a piece of artwork, was really outside my comfort zone. I've never really experienced that before, where the person's basically telling you what they want on the mask, and I found that to be extremely challenging. But it's a good reminder that the client was happy with the mask. This is actually over at the Douglas Animal Hospital on the north side. And Dr. Jim Barry said, look, I'm looking for a mask. And so he asked me to do one. And, but it was a good challenge for me. I really enjoyed it. And I love the grain on the mask. So he wanted something that he could display and not freak people out too much. So this, you see, I'm starting to get away from using horsehair, and I wanted to start really connecting. The more and more that I taught in the AVA program, my years at the college, I was very fortunate to create the program at the college of the Aboriginal Visual Arts program. It allowed me to research and allowed me to have access to other shows and other artists and be inspired by other people. And the one thing that's always true to me is just being one with the wood again and getting back to nature. And so I really took time and thought about this when I was doing this piece. And it's a piece of popple again, but it's spalted. And you can kind of see on if you're looking at it on the right side of the mask, which would be your left looking at it, has a bit of an interesting color running through it. And Dan Robichaud and I actually we would bag up some of the wood so that we could create this spalting effect. It's where mold penetrates the wood and creates this beautiful, unpredictable lines when you carve it, and it runs deep into the wood. And so that's what I decided to do with this piece, let it spalt a little bit. And I wanted to really bring in more of the outside into my artwork. And so I said, I'm not using horsehair, even though it's natural. I wanted to go with something else. So I actually use sweetgrass. And sweetgrass is traditional in many cultures. It's traditional in Wolastoqiyik, Mi'kmaq, in Wabanaki culture. Some people use it as medicine. They burn it, they smudge with it. And I decided I wanted to use this on the mask. And I'm just going to show you the next picture. So this is the same mask here, but basically what I wanted to do was represent a little bit more, and you can see the spalting there with the gray. I wanted to represent the surroundings that Wolastoqiyik people and Mi'kmaq people in this territory really take in. And you see it within our traditional garb and on a lot of our traditional artwork, that we are inspired by our surroundings. And the surroundings happen to be floral patterns. They happen to be, animals. They happen to be, so I'm really trying to kind of move forward as an artist and bring something in a little bit different. So this piece actually is now, it's home at the UMB library, and there is an Indigenous show there that I put together, and this is one of the pieces that they loved, and they ended up purchasing it. So that's a lily, and it's a local New Brunswick lily that I ended up carving into the side of it. and rubbing. So this is what you're seeing here is carbon. So I'd lay down the pattern, draw it out with carbon, and then after I would sketch into it and rub ashes into it. You'll see that more in my paddle work. So this piece here, this piece was, the picture was taken by Jeff Crawford. And this was a piece that I did while I was at the college. I was at the college for 11 years. And this piece kind of represents at the time I felt that sometimes it's good to really get frustration out as an artist, and we've all experienced this before. And I got this big gnarly piece of wood, and I really didn't know what to do with it at first. And I started cutting pieces off and started banging away at the piece, and it started to show a traditional hat, a traditional headdress. And I thought, I'm going to keep it. And these are one of those risky moments as an artist where you're just not sure what you really want to do with the piece, but I'm going to try and figure it out. I was actually going to do two masks, a mask on the top and a mask on the bottom. But my instincts told me not to do that and just follow the ridges at the top of this beautiful piece of wood. And it looks like as if the wind was kind of hitting it, and it's, it's an eagle feather at the top, or a turkey feather is traditional feathers. So I call this one Angry Zokum, which is an angry chief. And so when I get closer to it here, oh, sorry about that. You can see a few things. So very traditional in the sense of we don't have Western headdresses, even though when you see Indigenous chiefs here in the Atlantic region wear them, that's not ours traditionally. Traditionally, we have our chieftain hats go straight up with the feathers. That's for Mi'kmaq, Wolastoqiyik, and Passamaquoddy people. And also Abenaki and Wabanaki, or Abenaki as well. What I wanted to add here was some double curve motifs and something that really represents Wolastoqiyik culture here in the Atlantic region. And so it gave me an opportunity to play around with the research that I've done in the past to really understand what is traditional and what is non-traditional. And so I decided to use the purple to represent a wampum belt, and the white would be like the play off of a wampum belt, where you use the quahog shell, and you would get the dark purples and the white. And I thought, because most chieftain hats have this band that goes around it that celebrates part of their culture. It's usually highly floral. So I decided to add this into the piece and kind of showcase that. So these are double curve motifs with beautiful plant growing in the middle of it. And it's you find this in a lot of our traditional pieces. So that's also, I wanted to show you a close up so you can see the grain of the butternut. So the actual grain of the butternut is it's pretty outstanding. It's beautiful stuff. So here's another one. Drew Gilbert took this picture, by the way. And this was done for a client in Fredericton. Most of my pieces, they are in a gallery over at Queen Street, but most of my pieces are commissioned pieces. Usually when I start a mask, and I've been very fortunate that people will find out about it, and usually I get a buyer. Working with a gallery can be sometimes difficult, where your piece just sits for months and months and possibly years and not sell. I tend to sell most of my work by just other people finding out about it. So again, here's I wanted to show you a close up of the texture of the butternut. You can see the beautiful the movement. So I can manipulate the movement by sanding it and also by carving it. Depending on how you carve it, you really have to know how the grain works when carving with a mask. And I had a lot of times where I've actually knocked an entire nose right off a mask when I first started out. And, you make those crazy mistakes and you go, oh, damn, I remember. That's right. I shouldn't have done it that way. So you approach it from a different angle. And after, 30 plus years of carving, I've figured it out. It takes a while, but when you figure it out, then you can, but mistakes still happen. Sometimes it's hard to stop a crack from happening on your mask, and you really have to know how to baby it. So maybe what I'll do, Jean, is how are we doing for time, and do we have any questions at this point?
It's 12:36 to answer your question about time.
Okay. Any questions so far about the work?
A question came in from Brigitte earlier on. She wanted to know what year was that photo taken?
Which, with the college?
Yeah.
Last year. You look great, Brigitte. You haven't changed a bit. No, that was 1991. 1991. Yep. Mitch was still here. He had a beautiful afro. Everybody looked great back then. Jen, you got a question?
Just an observation, Charlie, when you were talking about the spalting process, and actually Dan introduced me to that last year up in the studio. I didn't really know anything about it. He was showing me examples. Yeah. And I don't know, something about seeing your masks and you talking about that, it reminds me of the raku process, I guess, because you were talking about how it's unpredictable. And I just had never thought of it in that way. Like it kind of there's something there that, do you agree?
Absolutely. Because it's like raku, you just don't know what you're going to get until you take it out of the garbage can, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of see what the process looks like. And it's exciting to be able to kind of, you have to be okay with it. You have to say, just motor through it and keep moving forward, even though if it, I've had a piece of spalt that was so gnarly that I just didn't want to carve it. But the more you dig down into it, the more you release these beautiful lines and color. So it's interesting. Yeah.
Sorry, my dog's going to bark. Yeah, you're introducing an element of chance, right? On purpose as part of the process, which is very cool.
Yeah, you always have to be able to take those risks. Yeah. Okay, should we keep going? All right, let's crack on. Okay, so paddle making. This is very interesting. I love this as much as making masks. And this is something that I researched while working at the college, developing the program. I thought, what are the traditional art, and what does traditional art mean to Wolastoqiyik, to Wabanaki people? Like, what is it? I don't celebrate dream catchers because they're not part of our culture. So, and if we're putting this fantastic program together, we have to make sure we're teaching very authentic things that that can be celebrated here in the Atlantic region. So paddles are one of them. So I'm going to start off with a big one. So this is a lot of fun. So the government came to me years ago while working in government, and they heard about my story. And Judy Ackwin, who's on with me, also shares this story, which would make us related. That Gabe Ackwin was from St. Mary's years ago. We're dating him back like he was born in the early 1800s and he lived to be 90. If you haven't heard the story, it's fantastic. Anyways, long story short, Gabe became friends with Queen Victoria's son, Prince Albert, who was the Prince of Wales at the time, and gave him a tour in his birch bark canoe up and down the Wolastoq River. And when he returned to where is the LG house on the south side, he returned the young prince, and became friends with the prince. They did some fishing and hunting together. The young prince invited Gabe back to England to give tours in one of the royal ponds, and they paid him $2 a day. So Gabe was a rich man when he returned. He went twice in his lifetime. So $2 a day back in the 1800s was probably pretty good money. Gabe came back and actually formed the first, it's interesting, when I did some research, I found that he developed the first foundation at St. Mary's. They call him the founder of St. Mary's. He's not. St. Mary's has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years before Gabe, but he actually built a foundation with some of the money that he ended up getting, which is kind of interesting. And I believe that his house used to be down by the old Tim Hortons on the south side or the north side of the river, down by the by Sedunx's community. So when they found this out, and he gifted a paddle to the prince before he left. So there's a book there that Denise Richard is holding, and it's the Book of Gabe. If you're interested in reading that book, you can go to a government website and search Gabe Aquin, and it should come up. It's free. So the government asked me, because they knew I was doing paddles, and when they heard the story, they had me do a paddle for Prince Charles, and I got to present him with this paddle and with the story of how our ancestors met one another. And it was fantastic. He's just a very nice man, very kind. And yeah, so he told me, make sure my handler, he turns around to me and he says, Charlie, make sure my handler gets the paddle. I'm going to use it when I get home. And I thought, this man probably has more, he probably has buildings filled with gifts, but I would like to think that maybe he did use it maybe once. So it's kind of it was a fun time getting to meet him. And so if you see here, there's a bit of a close-up, you can see a bit of my process. So Harriet Taylor, years ago, back when she was a department head and she retired as a dean at the college, I was trying to figure out a balance of how to really, instead of drawing it on, you know, these are very elaborate drawings. Instead of drawing it on by hand and really screwing up all the time, she said, why don't you use carbon? Like, put carbon down, put your image over the paddle and draw it on, and then lift the carbon up and you're left with the image. So it's kind of a fast track, if you will, a way to speed the process up and capture the image. So this is a traditional Wolastoqiyik image that I did some research on, and it's actually in the collections at the St. John Collection Center, Douglas Avenue in St. John. So Peter Larocque, who is a good friend, and he's a friend and an advocate of the college. Peter would allow me to go down on my own time and research some of the paddles and get to hold them. So Peter gave me white gloves. I'd be able to go down there, and it's like a kid in a candy store. Like, there's so many beautiful things that you just want to pull in. And this is the one that I decided to do for Prince Charles. It talks about basically the seasons. You know, you could see a snowflake in there, and you could see that the leaves, actually, you can't see the whole paddle, but the leaves go from almost a tiny bud to opening up the further down the face of the paddle that you get. So you can see here, after you carve it in, I take, traditionally what is thought to be done, Peter and I had many discussions on this, is that our ancestors, after carving paddles, they would rub ashes from a fire, coals, they'd crush them up and rub it into the image and then wipe it clean. And this is kind of that process. It's not identical, but what I did was I used the chip knife and carved into the image. And then I took ashes, or in this case, it's like charcoal that you can get at the store, crushed it down really fine and rubbed it into the paddle and then wiped it clean. And so this is part of that process. A lot of fun, because it's starting to introduce me, like you saw my masks, where I started to bring traditional imagery into the mask making. This is all very traditional. This is exactly the images that you would see down at the St. John Gallery. So I apologize, it's a little blurry, but you can see this is the difference. I did this by hand, and I didn't use carbon. But you know, I'm okay as an artist. If you look at my artwork, Ned was very meticulous about keeping things very symmetrical, and I wasn't like that. I found as an artist, I always drew outside the lines. I was the kid that colored all over the page. I didn't care. And I found that as an adult moving forward in the way that we teach, like no one's face is perfectly symmetrical. We all have differences in our body styles and the way that we see things. And I'm okay with things being off a little bit. So if you look at the mask, you know, the one with the chieftain headdress there, one side of his mouth is a little bit lower than the other side. I'm totally fine with that. And I think it adds character, you know. It really does. It kind of separates me from a lot of other artists that like to do this sort of work. So this is a paddle I did for my father on Father's Day, probably about 15 years ago. And I just wanted to gift him with something that he could put in his office. But I love the pattern. I love you can see the thistle, and you can see double curved motifs, and you can see ferns. And these are all things that surround us here in New Brunswick. So I'm bringing more of that landscape into my artwork. Again, this is a traditional image that was taken from the St. John Art Gallery, or sorry, the St. John Collection Center. And you could see the beautiful flower pattern and a little hummingbird kind of nipping at the flower in there. And again, just trying to recreate traditional Indigenous art, because there's not a lot of it in the Atlantic region. And you're seeing an increase. You're starting to see a rise because of the IVA program at the college and the hard work that we've done over the last 11 years. I'm proud to say that we have increased those numbers, that we are now creating more Indigenous artists, and I'm very proud of that. And, you know, whether they become contemporary Indigenous artists or whether they just stay traditional, if they went through the Indigenous program, at least they're getting a taste of what is and was traditional artwork in the Atlantic region. So it's very important that I preach that, because I don't want to wake up someday and find that all Indigenous people are just pan-Canadian Indigenous people. That if you go to a powwow here and you see someone wearing a Plains Cree, you know, regalia, and then you go out west and see the same thing, that's not really celebrating who we are as Indigenous people here in the Atlantic region. So staying traditional to me means everything. Contemporary, great, but elements of traditional, that's great too. So this is a piece of ash. Ash is very traditional to our culture for paddle making. It's a strong hardwood. It's very heavy. So, you know, I've only made one paddle really that fits to actually use outside. The rest are paddles that would be hung on the wall. So this is just giving you an idea of, you know, it's being okay with things not being perfect. I wanted to do a blow up of this and kind of give you an idea. But when you back it up and look at it, it looks pretty good. But up close, I'm okay with it. And I think from an artist's perspective, when it's hanging on the wall, after it's done, you know, if you're not holding it right up to your face, it really shows the overall picture, really speaks for itself. Kind of an out of focus picture, but I just wanted to show you a bit of the process where I lay them out on a workbench and I spray them. And I use varathane. So varathane, after you coat it, the varathane is, you know, it works really well, protects the wood, UV protectant. Okay. So do we have any questions about the paddles? Audrey?
My question wasn't specifically about the paddles. Is that okay?
Absolutely, yeah.
Could you expand a bit more on how you apply color to your masks?
Sure, yeah. So what I did was with with a darker wood like butternut, it might be harder to actually implement color. But what I did with the blue mask is I used acrylic paint and I watered it down, and I kept mixing there's about 5 or 6 different colors in that paint. And what I kept doing it until I got happy enough that I was like, this is going to be a cool color. And I always do it on a test piece, never directly on the work, especially after you just put 45 to 50 hours on a mask, and then you go and you're like, oh, you know, just doesn't look good. But you see like Audrey, you know, when you go into department stores now and you see like furniture that's kind of stressed, you know, where they pull through a bit of the grain and they leave a bit of the paint on. That was kind of my idea, that I wanted to still kind of show a little bit of the wood and let people know it's wood. So I didn't paint on really thick. And so that was really important to me. I wanted people still to kind of say, that's wood. Wow, that's really cool. It's painted. So that was my idea behind that. But with the color, it's just trying to say, what would his face look like if he was trying to climb this mountain and this bird was like blowing super cold wind on him? And that was kind of what I was trying to achieve at that point, I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. How are we doing for time, Jean? 12:51. Okay, we'll get motoring here. Oh. All right, can we see that?
Not yet.
Oh. Screen here. Okay, and then share screen.
That's good.
Oh, bear with me, guys. I'll just blast through here, get down to that piece. Technology. Okay, 3 paddles. Okay, other artwork. So, So, as you know, I like to do a lot of other stuff other than just because developing the AVA program 11 years ago, writing curriculum, this year being actually my 10th year that I would have been teaching at the college this year. I took the students out and we would go and get natural materials. This is extremely important as an Indigenous person. And I think for any culture, really, like we're all part of the land, we're all connected to the land. And celebrating that and getting those students out there and getting their hands on the material and how to do things properly without really hurting the tree, and knowing how to do this and able to make beautiful artwork out of it. So there's a piece of, this is not that piece of birch, by the way. I did another project with that piece of birch, but I did this years ago just to show the students that there's functionality with a lot of the Indigenous artwork here in the Atlantic region, between pottery, you know, before the introduction of metal pots, we were doing coiled pottery, using clay from the Wolastoqiyik River in different parts of the province. And another one of those fantastic materials is birch bark. So I did a birch bark container. This stuff was used for many different purposes. Storing meat and burying it in the ground, to making a moose call or collecting sap or using it as a bowl. Our ancestors were so good at creating these containers that they could boil contents inside of one of these containers by having the flame just kind of lick the bottom of the container without catching it on fire. And how they did that, I don't know if they used like a pitch around the bottom to make sure it was sealed, but just to know that it was such a versatile material to use, it's incredible. So this is winter bark. So this picture here, you can see the winter rind. You see how it's dark where my fingers are? That's the winter rind. The rind is the piece that's on the birch bark, and after a couple frosts, when it gets cold out, you can go out and collect the winter rind. Then you can draw on it and etch it. And this is etching, which is very traditional to our culture. We used to etch images into trees inside our traditional wigwams to tell stories to kids. It was a way of communicating. The basketry, I love basketry as well. I don't do enough of it, but this is a basket that I made a while back. We had many talented artists come in over the years, and I have many family members still, like Victor Bear is a relative of mine, Shirley Bear. They're both artists in their own right, who create baskets, and another beautiful part of our culture. So I just wanted to add that in there as other works. This is a fishing spear I did years ago, and I did it for the Transportation Center in Moncton. I did a paddle, Mi'kmaq paddle, and a fishing spear. And I told them I didn't feel comfortable doing the paddle because I'm not Mi'kmaq. And I wanted them to go find a Mi'kmaq paddle artist, and they couldn't find one. So when they came back to me, I said, look, I'll do it, but you need to say very clearly that this is a replica of a Mi'kmaq paddle. You cannot call it a Mi'kmaq paddle because I'm not Mi'kmaq. So these are one of the two pieces that went down there. But this, I could say this is traditional to our culture as well as Wolastoqiyik people. It's a salmon fishing spear. So that was fun. These are great things to create. This was a project that I did back in 2003 with Cody Brooks from Sedunxas. And I took him on as an apprentice years and years ago. This was before I started working at the college. And Cody and I put in about 120 hours into this piece, maybe more. And it actually was 30 feet long when we brought it to my place, into my garage. I had to cut about 5 feet off of it just to shut the garage door. And these pieces that you're seeing are about 4 feet in length. So the fiddleheads are about, actually maybe a little bit smaller, maybe about 3 feet there. The turtle's about 3 feet, and the eagle's 3 feet, and then the person on the top is about 3 feet, and then there's a long braid of hair that goes down the back. And we did this project. It is actually driving out to Dan's place and Judy's place. It's along the Nashwauk. And this is some property that's held in trust by the people of St. Mary's. And I haven't been out there, I think I've been out there one other time. But I heard that it looks very old and gnarly, and it's dark, and it's, you know, it's really aged over time, which is really cool, because that's what we want them to do. That's at least what I want it to do. Want it to add some more character to it. So that was a lot of fun. And I basically did a replica of what we did at the, Ned showed us how to do these at when I was in high school. Some more traditional images that I did. I did a sign for St. Thomas University. I ended up, I learned a very valuable lesson. I rushed the sign for the gentleman who's the head of communications at St. Thomas. And really played into what his needs were and really sacrificed more on what my needs were as an artist. So I kind of rushed it, but I was very proud of the sign. It just didn't fare well in the end because of the depth of the carving and, you know, the design work. I think given another shot at it, I would have changed it, but still proud of the work. These are traditional images that you would find here in the Atlantic region. Again, more of the double curve motif and looking at flower patterns. So here's that sign you could see, and it says basically thank you in the middle in Wolastoqiyik. So if you're at St. Thomas, I think they're taking it down, and they're going to work on something new. So, but it's fun. It's fun to work on. See how I'm really kind of stepping outside of my my comfort zone here. This is recently I did a project at Mount Carleton for the province of New Brunswick. And this was a donated piece that I decided to do on top of the project that I did with Brandon Mitchell. So this is an outdoor sculpture piece, and I'm using traditional iconic images. These are totems. These are traditional totems of Wolastoqiyik and Mi'kmaq. And so instead of signing your name, Charles Gaffney, back in the 1700s, we would have signed with a family totem. So there would have been a drawing of one of these beautiful totems. So, and the idea here was to get the images to collect. If you're walking down looking at this, you would see a little kid would look up and see the bird with the blue sky, and you would get a lot of the background brought forth to really highlight this piece. There's a closer picture of it there. So always willing to take on something challenging. So that's the piece there. You can see what I mean by the trees coming in through the wood and how green it is, and just beautiful. I love it. We should have about 4 of these at the college. Just throwing that out there. Should have a few of these around the property. So artist collaboration, I'm just going to keep going because of the time. So here's my buddy Shane Burley Dutcher. This was a very special project that we did through the College of Craft and Design, through the ABA program. Barb Martin came to us, it's Hahn Martin Associates. They came to us and said, Charlie, we would really like for the Indigenous program here to kind of be the lead on this project. This piece is incompleted. I didn't have the completed piece, but there's some books around the college that talks about the project to heart. So this is me really being able to work with other artists and able to let go of the reins and not be in control, and being able to allow for other ideas to come in. It's essential as an artist, I think, for working with other artists, and it really builds character, and it teaches you how to work with other people and really hold their ideas to be valid and true, and you support that. And this project is based on residential school survivors, and it is a wampum that basically down on the bottom, you can't see it, but it's these are all little wooden pieces that the kids painted from all around New Brunswick, and there was thousands of these pieces. They came to the college, and I came to experts like Jean Rooney, Joe Arbo. I came to all kinds of people that I wanted to speak to and say, listen, how do we make this work? So Jean was very gracious in helping, and she helped me realize that we could create this kind of giant fruit roll-up that wouldn't crack or split out of certain materials. And so we managed to get the materials together, and we put this beautiful, we built this special case, and Joe helped us pour it, and it hardened. And it's transportable, it's flexible, so thank you, Jean. And we special glued all these pieces on. What was important about it is that we had residential school survivors come into the college, and we worked on this for over a year. That they came into the college and they actually helped put the tiles onto the piece. It was part of that healing process. So to be part of this it was a very emotional journey for me. Having family that went through day schools, I was fortunate that none of my direct family members went to residential school, but the horrific tales and the horrific actions that happened during that time were kind of laid out on this piece. So, but if you want to know more, there's books at the college you can look at. Mount Carleton, gorgeous place, absolutely beautiful. So this is always keep your ideas and artists on paper. So working with Brandon Mitchell, this call for artists came out, and the government was looking for an Indigenous artist or an artist team to put a piece together for Mount Carleton at their new provincial lodge that they just built. The lodge is gorgeous. So I called Brandon and I said, hey, I got an idea. Do you want to do this project? He said, hell yes, let's do it. So, and I knew working with Brandon would be special. Brandon is Mi'kmaq and I am Wolastoqiyik. And Mount Carleton, if you don't know, Mount Carleton right here is a meeting place for Wolastoqiyik and Mi'kmaq people. From the Nepeziquet River coming down from Campbellton area is where the Mi'kmaq would travel, and the Wolastoqiyik would travel upriver from the Tobic, and it actually comes to Mount Carleton. And they call this place, there's a mountain there called Zugamuck Peak, which is Chief's Peak, place where chiefs meet. So I kept my idea. Brandon gave me his idea, and we went at it. And I think we knocked it out of the park. So this is a piece that I did. Very fortunate to rent out a casemate at the college. The administration agreed that I could work on this. It was fun. The paddles are the sun rays coming off of the sun. And then we did a Wolastoqiyik canoe, a Mi'kmaq canoe, and the mountain. And that's what I had to do. This was my part of the job. Now, Brandon had a really hard job because he had to paint everything. So I was like, wow, I'm done. This is great. And then you have to leave it into your partner's hands to really create something special that you got to let go. You just have to say, okay, go for it. And Brandon did an amazing job. So this is the install piece that we put in at Mount Carlton. We were just laying it out before we installed it. So he did a painting, and he tells a story of the lands and what happened in the land prior to Europeans and post, so pre and post. And it turned out really cool. And he put in some treaties in here. He did a great job. So he had a lot of painting to do.
Charlie, is there a reason for the number of paddles? There are 15.
Yeah, so thank you, Brigitte. That's really cool that you mentioned that. So I think we have 16 in total. There is 15 because there is 15 Indigenous communities in the province that are recognized. So we have Mi'kmaq, Wolastoqiyik. We have 15 in total. We added one for the Passamaquoddy because they do have land here in New Brunswick, and they're actually waiting for Canada to recognize that. So we threw them a paddle to welcome them, and they are part of our Wabanaki territory. So there's Brandon. He's scared of heights. I don't know why he even got up there. He was just shaking, the poor guy. But then we brought in the big guns, real carpenters, to help put it up. And that is, that's the piece. It's a massive piece. It's 22 feet long by almost 15 feet high. So this is what people see when they come up there. They will see the Wolastoqiyik canoe, the Mi'kmaq canoe. Now there's going to be interpretation for this, and they're going to be doing all kinds of great things. They're going to show part of the process through video. There's going to be a video screen showing some of the process, and the province really supported us 110% on this, which was a fun project. So inspiration, I know it's 1 o'clock, Jean. So I was very fortunate that-
it's 7 minutes after, but keep going.
Okay, so I was very fortunate, very excited. I just came back from England. I was over there with my girlfriend, Jen, who is with us here today. And we were able to, Jen booked tickets for us to go see Barbara Hepworth's place in St. Ives down in Cornwall, which was absolutely amazing. And we also had gallery tickets to the Tate Museum down there, which is the brand new museum, or brand new gallery they put in. So this is Barbara Hepworth's work, and inspiration comes from all different places. She met Picasso. So I was telling Jean the other day, when you look at the work, you can see some of Picasso's influence in Barbara's work. Very prolific person, just absolutely incredible. And this is, I can't remember when she passed, but she was around in the late 1800s and doing her thing as a woman, carving and playing, being one of the big guns. Her work is just phenomenal. So beautiful garden. She has a beautiful place where she works. Overlooks, the beautiful St. Ives Bay and the beautiful water. I could see how she could be really inspired down there. It's such a gorgeous place. Her work, so as a carver, you'll see that she started with, she's carving out of wood, and then she starts getting into stone, and she works with plaster. So this is kind of how I'm going, right? Like, as a carver, you don't just carve out of one material, you carve out of several materials. This is another one of her pieces. So I find it very peaceful. Her work is very simplistic. The lines are beautiful. A lot of work. I know that working out of stone is not easy. So that's me down in St. Ives. And two things you need to find to be successful being an artist. The first one is being passionate about what you do and finding inspiration. And the other one is having someone to support you and love you during that process. Thank you.
Bravo.
That's so well done, Charlie boy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well done.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful, Charlie. I could add a third thing to that list. I think to be a successful artist, you also need to have really good models and other good artists in community with you.
That's right.
And as you were giving your talk, Charlie, I was really struck by how I remember being at that presentation where yourself and Shane Pearley Dutcher were presenting that giant wampum belt and kind of honoring the residential school survivors. And when that exhibition opened, I think you thanked every single person in that entire process. You know, your community members, everybody who supported you, everybody who answered a question. And I think it brings me back to the whole point of these lectures is that we're actually teaching each other. And I'd often heard it mentioned within Indigenous communities of like all our relations. And I think as artists, we're not just individuals, we're in relation to each other and we are in community. And I know that's something I have taken and modeled myself specifically from how you do things and your work. So I remember that was one of the first exhibitions I was at the gallery, and I thought, you know what, that's amazing. Like, you taught me that kind of graciousness and to remember to thank people and to remember how we are connected. And I think the Indigenous ways of knowing, of being connected with land, you know, is evidenced in your work, but also that deep sense of appreciation for community and connection.
Yeah.
So I just really wanted to thank you for sharing that, because, you know, as artists and as educators, we don't just teach what we know, we teach who we are. And I know I'm conscious of time and I don't want to waffle on. I guess I'm just trying to wrap this all up to say how awesome that was, how much we appreciate you. Thank you for sharing your practice with us today. Did you have any final thoughts or words before we wrap up?
Just wanted to say thank you, Jean. You know, the college is such an inspirational place, a very special place in my heart. And just keep doing the great work, keep doing the good work, and keep doing these series. And the inspiration is all around us. And you're right, it's absolutely by, I used to go out of my way and go into the ceramic studio, or go out of my way, like every day I would go in and say hi to people. And that's so important, because that cross educational learning doesn't just, it's not stagnant. It's something that is, you seek it out. I think as an artist myself, I love talking to people and just experiencing what others have to share. So you're absolutely right. I think just being part of that process, Jean, and thanking people along the way, and working with people, open yourself up as an artist and allow other people to work with you. Yeah. And I think that's how people will learn. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I had fun. It was great.
Yeah. Thank you, Charlie. And we've loved listening to your talk, and seeing how your work is prolific. It's taken off. An old instructor of mine used to say, well, we're not professional footballers. Our careers don't end at the age of 35. When we look to people, you know, like Louise Bourgeois, like some of the greatest contemporary artists who are discovered in their 70s, and they're prolifically producing work into their mid and late 90s. So I think we all have to plan for longevity in our art practice. Anyway, that's what I think.
One last thing, Jean, if
Yeah.
I forgot to go back to it, but if people want to look at my new website that was just launched, there's a video on there, and it's just charliegaffney.com, www.charliegaffney.com. And you can see more of my work, and you can actually see a really cool video that Desmond Simon helped out with. And my son, Nathan Gaffney, helped with the website. So very cool. I'm getting out there. I'm moving on. I'm starting to shake things up.
Excellent. Good to hear it. So we'll go check out Charlie's website. And thank you to all of the rest of our guests for attending. A reminder that next week's talk on November the 19th is Elizabeth Demerson speaking on harvesting the wild. So that's a goodie. So what we want, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.